We are happy to have with us Ben Jealous, former chairman of the NAACP and a frequent on-air guest of ours. Ben, thank you for finding the time and working late tonight.
Thank you, Brian.
Can you join me in starting with a very important point I tried to make at the start of our coverage? It would be unfair and inaccurate if people came away from the coverage thinking this is a black crowd. These are black protesters. As I tried to point out, Minneapolis is a very diverse city in a state 7% African-American by the last census. And more than that, and importantly, this crowd is incredibly diverse. What they have in common is anger over the death of George Floyd.
No, that's exactly right. I was just there a few weeks ago to bring an app called Citizen to the city that we think, frankly, helps to discourage police brutality when it's used. It, frankly, helps keep all of us safer from the bad guys, even bad cops. And when you walk through the city, it's incredibly diverse. It's incredibly beautiful. But let's be clear, the fight against police brutality has been a multiracial fight from the very beginning of this country. You can go all the way back to the Boston Massacre. And, Paul Revere painted out Crispus Attucks, the first person killed, an abolitionist more than a century later, I guess about half a century later, rather, painted him back in. But, the first person killed in the Boston Massacre was a young black man killed amidst a crowd of protesters that were mostly white. And so in our country, the opposition to police brutality runs deep amongst all of us. And when you're in that city, and, I spent a lot of time there when I was president of the NAACP, the racial inequity smacks you right in the face. In the depth of the reception, there were 2 states in the country where black unemployment was 3 times white, no matter what level of education you had, whether you had a PhD or no high school degree. That was Mississippi and Minnesota. And so while Minnesota is nice, it's also like Mississippi with snow. And what we have to understand is that every time that you see a situation like this, buildings are burning, people are protesting, the spark is always an act of police brutality. But the tinder is always joblessness and housing. And in this COVID crisis, both of those tensions are way up. And frankly, the attitude of leaders counts. The Freddie Gray situation here, with all due respect to their prosecutor here in Baltimore, was a much more complex situation. Freddie Gray was killed in a van, and there was no video. This man was killed on the street, and there was plenty of video. And so one of the ways that we brought the city to peace was our prosecutor, Ms. Mosby, stepped forward and said that the officers would be prosecuted. And if they want to bring peace in those streets and quickly, that's the best thing that they can do. And let's be clear, the leadership will have to come from the county, will have to come from the state, because Donald Trump, our president, who still believes that the Central Park Five are guilty and says so proudly, even though DNA has exonerated them, well, no one has faith that his Justice Department would actually do the right thing.
Talk to me briefly about where's the governor, where's the mayor, where's the attorney general, where's the local member of Congress? Should they be more visible, or in plain English, is this energy that needs to be expended as we sit here and not only mourn the loss of George Floyd, this is somebody's livelihood in flames, right next door to somebody else's livelihood in flames, and so on and so on.
If I was the governor, if I was the mayor, I would be listening to the attorney general, Keith Ellison, and I would be listening to his successor in Congress, Ms. Omar. And I'll be listening to the leadership of the local NAACP. That town is the home of Roy Wilkins, one of the early and great presidents of the NAACP. And quite frankly, those are the folks I would be listening to. And those are the folks who understand in their gut that, as Maya said, and I got to thank her, she trained me well when I was 18 years old. As Maya said, there's only one solution here, and it is justice. Justice is our first civil right. It's the first purpose of the U.S. Constitution. And justice has been denied in Minnesota in mind-boggling ways in recent years. I mean, this is like the third of three big strikes. You have Philando Castile. You have the young white woman who was killed by a black officer. Now you have this black man with his, being choked to death by an officer's knee, despite the fact that he's handcuffed. There's nobody in this city who should feel safe. There's nobody. And the only way to make them feel safe is to be clear that justice will be sought and justice will prevail.
Ben Jealous, well, first of all, this is not an endorsement. I do have the Citizen app on my phone, and I use it, so thank you for that. And secondly, thank you for reminding our audience that our mutual friend Maya has the DNA of the struggle in her veins and in her family history. So we'll go down as being a mutual admiration society for that.